Hello everyone, this side Manisha Mishra, Assistant Professor in Mathematics, Applied Science Department at Central News Institute of Technology and Management, Gurgaon. And this college is affiliated to Maharshi Dayanand University, Rohtak. And your today's topic will be measure of variation or measure of dispersion. So first, in measure of variation, I will discuss the topic standard deviation, mean deviation, and merits and demerits of both of the standard deviation and mean deviation. So first, just discussing what is measure of variation. So measure of variation or measure of dispersion, both are same thing. So what is the meaning of variation or dispersion? That means variation or dispersion indicates spreadness, like, right? So spread of data or variation of data from the central tendency. So we have already discussed mean, median, mode to measure the central tendency. So now to measure the variation or dispersion, there are a few methods like standard deviation, mean deviation. These are the methods to measure the variation or dispersion. So dispersion or variation indicates spread of data or variation of data from the central tendency. The concept of dispersion indicates that no two data one perfectly identical, means कोई भी जो भी दो data है वो identical नहीं होने चाहिए. And when the variability is more among data, central tendency is less representative. Now, if we are studying measure of dispersion, so qualities of a good measure of dispersion. So what is the qualities? A good measure of dispersion should possess the following qualities. It should be rigidly defined. It should be easy to compute and comprehend. It should be based on all the values. It should be capable of further algebraic treatment. If suppose in your exam qualities of suppose ask for write the qualities of a good measure of their variation or dispersion, then you can write all these four points. Now, how to measure the dispersion or variation? So to measure the dispersion or variation, we have 3 to 4 method, and first method is your standard deviation. So what is a standard deviation? In statistics, the standard deviation is a measure of the amount of variation or dispersion of a set of values. Like we can say also that the measure of dispersion of a set of data from its mean. Now, what is standard deviation? So there is a definition here. Standard deviation is the positive square root of the average of the square of sums of deviation. So first one, I told you what is deviation. D is equal to x minus a. This is your deviation where x is your given variable and a will be your assumed mean. So this deviation is same as the mean deviation, like means arithmetic mean deviation जो हमने discuss किया था. So standard deviation is the positive square root of the average of the square of sums of deviation, and deviations taken from mean. It represents the variability of data from the average. It is an absolute measure of dispersion. It is always less than range. Range is a new topic we will discuss further. Now, what is variance? So first variance, after that I will give you a formula of standard deviation. So variance is another absolute measure of dispersion or measure of variation. It is the square of standard deviation. In other words, standard deviation is the positive square root of variance, or you can say variance is a square of the standard deviation. It is capable of further mathematical manipulations if the if the two data sets have the same x bar means arithmetic mean, combined variation will be your sigma 1 2. Standard deviation is noted by sigma. So sigma 1 2 square is equal to n1 sigma 1 square plus n2 sigma 2 square upon n1 plus n2, where n1 n2 refer to the number of observation in the first and second data sets. Sigma 1 square, variance of the first data set. Sigma 2 square, variance of the second data set. Why we are writing sigma square? Because sigma square means variance of the data set, and what variance is the square of the standard deviation. So your standard deviation will be sigma is equal to square root of summation x minus x bar whole square upon n. Now just look at the definition of this standard deviation. Standard deviation is the positive square root of the average. Now standard deviation, look at the formula. Standard deviation is the positive square root of the average of the square of sums of deviation. Average of the squares of sum of deviation. Deviation I told you x minus a. A means assumed mean. So here assumed mean या arithmetic mean is x bar. So x minus x bar whole square and whole summation divided by n. So this is the definition of standard deviation, and variance is equal to sigma square is equal to summation x minus x bar whole square upon n. So both of the formula are related to each other. So just learn one formula and just learn one definition, but one definition can define other definition. So just learn all these two definitions. Now next one is coefficient of variation. So this relative measure is known as coefficient of variation or coefficient for calculating CV means coefficient of variation. None of the variables should be negative, right? If one of the variable is negative, that means we cannot calculate our coefficient of variation. So the coefficient of variation formula is sigma upon x bar into 100. In exam, there only one question will be here, and they ask 3 to 4 standard deviation, calculate standard deviation, mean deviation, coefficient of variation, and covariance. In one question, they will ask you for 3 to 4 topic points. So just remember all these formula. Now next is there is an example here. The per kg retail prices of apples in Delhi in different months were found as month September to March and prices 60 to 64. So just calculate variance, standard deviation and coefficient of variation. So in one question there are 3 points is asking. Now we need, so first of all we need deviation. So deviation is your x minus x bar. So price means x is given, variables are given, and you can calculate n. So x is given, so now you will calculate arithmetic mean x bar first of all. So summation x is equal to 357. So x bar is equal to summation x upon n, and n is given 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. So your x bar is 51. Now next step is your find deviation, and deviation is x minus x bar. So there is a table, and you can make another column x minus x bar, then find x minus x bar whole square. So your x minus x bar is 60 minus 51, 60 minus 50 minus 51. So there will be another column which is x minus x bar. Now we will find x minus x bar whole square, and we need summation of x minus x bar whole square and positive absolute value we need. So if x minus x bar whole square negative, then we will take positive. So sigma is equal to, sigma means standard deviation, is equal to summation x minus x bar whole square upon n. So 568 upon 7. So 81.14, it means approx 9. And variance, you can calculate your variance. Variance is the square of the positive square of the standard deviation. So 81.14. Coefficient of variation is sigma upon x bar into 100. So just write the value of sigma and x bar here, then this is your coefficient of variation. Now there is another one question is here. Following is the earning purchase earned by an investor from 8 scripts: 18, 11, 16, 9, 15, 13, 17, 8. So calculate standard deviation by direct method. So x is given, x square, you need to calculate x square and summation of x square. And direct formula is your sigma is equal to summation d square upon n minus summation d upon n whole square is equal to, that means d is your x minus a, so you will calculate your assumed mean and find the summation d. So summation d, after the calculating d, you will find your summation d, and next column will be your d square, and then you will find summation d square and put all these value here, then your standard deviation is 20. Next is merits of standard deviation. So standard deviation आप खुद से देख सकते हैं, you can see that standard deviation is based on all items of the data or the given set. So it is based on all items, hence superior to range, interquartile range, quartile deviation. Second point, it is most widely used measure of dispersion. It is least affected by sampling fluctuations. It is rigidly defined. It is capable of further algebraic treatments. And the next is demerits of standard deviation. So it is difficult and time consuming to calculate. Of course, if your data is large, then you will take time to calculate your standard deviation. It is affected by extremely large values. It is unsuitable for open-ended series. I told you that what is open-ended series. If suppose 0 to 10, 10 to 20, and last one is 40 above. That means 40 above, there is no limit, infinity. So it is unsuitable for open-ended series. Next topic is your skewness. So what is skewness? Skewness is a measure of central tendency and measure of variation. Dispersion means variation are not fully sufficient to analyze and understand a data set. So skewness refers to the study of symmetry of the distribution. A symmetrical distribution is one of the graph of which is well shaped. So basically skewness, this is the topic your next unit. So we will discuss more about skewness in your next unit. Now there are properties of standard deviation. So what is the properties? If a constant is added or subtracted to all variables, standard deviation is not affected, but coefficient of variation will be affected. If all the variables are multiplied or divided by a constant, standard deviation is also multiplied or divided by a constant. In this case, coefficient of variation will remain unchanged. Incorrect standard deviation can be corrected. Incorrect standard deviation can be corrected, and combined standard deviation can be calculated. Standard deviation of n natural numbers can be calculated as, if suppose n natural numbers are given, then you can calculate your standard deviation directly. Sigma is equal to square root of n square minus 1 upon 12. And the next point is the value of standard deviation is always greater than or equal to 0. So it cannot be negative, right? The meaning of this point is that the standard deviation can never be negative. All the observation are equal if sigma is equal to 0. Suppose if you have your standard deviation 0, that means all the observation are equal. This is the meaning, means it will not, if it is defined to unequal for unequal data set, unequal variables. Now there is an example here. For these following set of data, calculate mean and standard deviation. So for mean, you need to find summation x. So variable are given, so just find summation x. Summation x is 210, and for x standard deviation, you need to calculate your deviation, and deviation is x minus x bar. So calculate x minus x bar. After that, calculate x minus x bar whole square. So sigma is equal to square root of summation x minus x bar whole square upon n. Just write the value of summation x minus x bar whole square, and your sigma is 16.08. There is another example here. If the mean of 10 values is 60, if the mean of 10 values is 60, that means n is 10 and mean x bar is equal to 60, and sum of square of deviation from 50 is 5000. Sum of square of deviation means summation d square is given. D is equal to x minus a, and summation d square is equal to x minus summation x minus x bar whole square. So that is given 5000. Calculate standard deviation of these 10 values. So first find x bar summation x upon n, which is given 60. Now, so 60 is equal to summation x upon 10. So your summation x is equal to 600. And you know what is your standard deviation. Sigma is equal to summation f, sorry, right, the value of this is incomplete. You will complete all these question. So standard deviation is equal to square root of summation x minus x bar whole square upon n, or summation d square upon n. So just write 5000 upon n is your 10. So 500 is took square root of 500, and then that will value is your standard deviation. And there is another formula in case of discrete series. So discrete series, if suppose given, that means frequency is given, so your formula will be changed. So some formula will be summation f x minus x bar whole square upon n, and another formula will be sigma is equal to summation fx square upon n minus summation fx upon n whole square, and sigma is equal to third one, sigma f d square upon n minus summation f d upon n whole square. मीन्स आपका फ्रीक्वेंसी से सब में मल्टीप्लाई हो जाएगा और सेम सब कुछ वैसे ही रहेगा. There is a example here. Size of land holding of small farmer in a district are given below. So calculate mean, standard deviation, and coefficient of variation. This is your 8 marks question. So farm size x is given, and number of farms are 24. F is given, and we need to calculate d is equal to x minus x bar and fd square, because this is a discrete series, because number of farms means frequency is given here. So just first of all find mean. So x bar is equal to frequency is given, then a plus summation fd upon n. So from the table you will get your mean 14.144, and sigma is equal to 10.676, and the coefficient of variation will be your 76.07, and this is your standard deviation. So this is your exercise. So just calculate all these 3 points. There is a shortcut method. Sigma is equal to summation d square upon n minus summation d upon n whole square, where d is equal to x minus a assumed mean. There is another example here. So just these 3 to 4 questions are here, and this is your exercise. So just find all these points from these questions. Now, already I think merits and demerits I have already discussed with you. So another topic is your mean deviation. So what is mean deviation? Mean deviation is another measure to measure the variation, or to measure the dispersion. So another measure of dispersion is known as mean deviation. So average of sum of absolute deviations from mean or median is called mean deviation. This is also an absolute measure of dispersion. Mean deviation is least when deviations are taken from median. Mean deviation is equal to summation absolute, this is absolute deviation upon n, where absolute value of d is equal to x minus median. In case of discrete or continuous series, mean deviation is calculated that means discrete series means if frequency is given, then you will calculate your mean deviation by this formula, summation f into mean deviation upon absolute value of deviation upon n. There is another coefficient of mean deviation. The relative measure of mean deviation is known as coefficient of mean deviation, and coefficient of mean deviation is equal to mean deviation divided by median. So just learn 2 formula. Mean deviation means absolute deviation upon n, means summation of absolute deviation upon n, and in discrete series mean deviation is equal to summation f into absolute deviation upon n, and coefficient of mean deviation will be your mean deviation is divided by median. Now Uses. Mean deviation is used to calculate errors in business forecasting. It is of limited practical use because it is based on absolute deviations and unfit for further mathematical treatment. Next is merits of mean deviation. It is based on all items. Thus, it is a better measure of dispersion than range and quartile. Range I will discuss further. Second point, it is easy to calculate and understand. It is not affected by extremely large values, because if large values is given, then you will take your deviation and value will be small. Demerits of mean deviation. It is not suitable for open-ended data sets. I have already told you what is open-ended data set. It cannot be used for further algebraic manipulations. So standard deviation and mean deviation, both of the topic will measure the measure of variation or measure of dispersion. And next I will discuss in next video your third unit, correlation and regression. Maybe I will give you some examples of all these. That in one example I will ask arithmetic mean, the median, standard deviation, coefficient of variation, and mean deviation. All of the points I will ask. So just I think this is a sufficient, and I hope you will like this video. So thank you, and just learn.